Hello and happy Friday to all our YouTube family of subscribers, viewers, and fans. Because Auction Week is starting in Phoenix today, we'll be bringing you a series of special videos throughout this time, so the coverage we're bringing you is current. Actually, Auction Week is more like 2 weeks, so in order to not get behind in bringing you a series of special content videos for the next couple of weeks, we're kicking it off with a follow-up to the in-depth look we did recently with Dan Curtis, proprietor of AMC Restorations, and his impressive and one-of-a-kind collection of red, white, and blue muscle cars from Kenosha, Wisconsin. We believe that no one has ever assembled a complete collection of these legendary and iconic muscle cars from over half a century ago. They're important to automotive history, so we should all be thankful that Dan has put this collection together for all to enjoy. Now, in any condition, merely assembling this collection would be nearly impossible, but in this case, all 5 are in completely restored condition. Simply amazing. But don't think because these cars are rare, valuable, and desirable that they only sit in a temperature-controlled garage. Oh no. Oftentimes, one or more of these iconic cars can be seen up close at local shows, cars and coffee events, and cruise nights, with Dan standing right alongside to answer questions from people who don't really know their significance in the annals of muscle car history. Except for the Superstock drag car, all of these beauties are driven to and from each event, so old car fans can actually see them on the streets and hear them run. Thanks, Dan, for your dedication to these impressive cars, both in your personal collection and what you do every day at your restoration business. I'm going to turn it over to Dan now so he can give you a brief description of each car. Below, we've linked all of the previous videos that we've posted on these beauties in case you missed them the first time around, or you might just want to see them again. Leave a comment on what you think of this awesome collection. Which one is your favorite and why? Thanks for watching and enjoy the next 2 weeks of our special coverage that we'll be bringing. We're truly blessed to live right here in the heart of some of the best collector car auctions to be found anywhere in the world. Now, let's go for a ride.
Hi, my name is Dan Curtis, and I own a company called AMC Restorations, and we actually restore American Motors cars. But we're not here today to talk about my company. We're here to talk about my personal collection of all 5 red, white, and blue factory AMC muscle cars. The car we're standing in front of right now is a 1969 Superstock AMX made by American Motors, and they made 52 of them. And in fact, this car is number 52, and it was a very successful race car when it was raced as American Dream. It was a 3-time National Hot Rod Association champion in the Pacific Northwest, and the way it is, the colors that it has right now are in fact the colors that it came from American Motors in cooperation with the Hurst Corporation.
I had the good fortune of befriending someone who owned this car since it was new, and when he got to the point in his life where he realized he was probably not going to restore it, he called up and offered it to me, and I jumped at the opportunity to own it. This car was in a million pieces when we acquired it. You'll notice on the side of the car that there's some lettering for American Dream, and that, in fact, is how the car was raced in 1970 and 71. And it was a very successful race car with 3 National Hot Rod Association, or sometimes called NHRA, regional championships. There were a number of these cars that were racing at that time. Pete's Patriot, the Dragon Lady, and American Dream were some of the more well-known cars because they were very successful. And you'll notice down towards the back of the car there's some additional lettering, and that is a replication of what was on it when it was raced, except it now has the information for my shop that did the restoration rather than the people that were working on it back in the early 70s.
Our next car is also a 1969, but this one is a Rambler Scrambler, better known as the Hurst SC Rambler. And the reason for that is American Motors and Hurst coordinated making a unique car in addition to the Superstock car that we just referenced earlier, and this one is what's called an A scheme. It has the bright red paint down the side, and this car was a former champion from 72 to 74, and I believe the K class in Kansas City Raceway. Actually, when I bought this car, a gentleman that had previously owned it contacted me and asked me a couple of questions about it, and sure enough, it was his car, so he volunteered to give me some of the original trophies and some of the original parts that he had retained from this car way back in the mid-70s. You'll notice on the hood of this one, it has all this graphics, and that is the way it came from the dealer in 1969. That 390 cubic inch and air graphics on that, and the blue graphics on the hood and the roof of the trunk. Those are all the way this car was looked. They were all on this car in the dealer showroom.
SC Rambler stands for Super Coupe Rambler. And that was another collaboration of Hurst with American Motors, just like the Superstock AMX.
This next car is also a 1969 Hurst Scrambler, but this one is in a less bold paint scheme, which is called the B scheme. And rather than have the bright red down the sides and all the lettering and stuff on top of the hood, this one simply has red and blue on the side, which we'll show you in a side view in the pictures. And this one is also a pretty interesting car. This car was driven by the local Rambler dealership's wife, and she got pregnant and couldn't steer the car anymore, so then she had to switch to some other more family car. But can you imagine a woman that's 6 or 7 months pregnant driving this muscle car down the street as her daily driver? Pretty cool car, pretty cool history.
They only made about 300 or a little less than 300 of these B schemes, and they made a little over 1,200 of the A scheme, and the total production was 1,512. I feel fortunate to have one of each, considering how rare they are.
So the first three cars we talked about were reasonably rare cars. The Hurst Superstock AMX was one of 52, and in fact, number 52. The A scheme Scrambler, they made a little over 1,200 of those, and the B scheme Scrambler, they made a little under 300. This car here is called a Trans Am Javelin, and it's a 1970 version. And the paint scheme on this thing is exactly the way you could buy it from the dealership. And I added some wheels that were more consistent with when these cars were raced, but otherwise this is the way the car came. And they made 100 of these, and there are only less than 50 known to be remaining, and this is one of those 50.
In 1969, the Penske team started racing for American Motors, and they raced a Javelin in this very similar red, white, and blue paint scheme. So early in 1970, American Motors decided to come out with a commemorative version of this car called the Trans Am Javelin. It had this rear wing spoiler, which you can see in the back in one of the photos, and that rear wing spoiler identifies the Trans Am Javelin as one of the unique cars.
This last car that we're going to talk about is a AMC Rebel machine. And so in 1970, most of your car companies had large muscle cars. AMC had the AMX and Javelin, but they didn't have a larger car that was considered a muscle car. So they took the Rambler Rebel, and they put the big 390 V8 engine in it, and they put some additional go-fast stuff on the engine, which resulted in this car having the highest factory horsepower for American Motors of any car they ever made, and that's 340 horsepower. They made roughly a little under 1,000 of these red, white, and blue ones, and then somewhere around 900 of Rebel machines in solid colors. But the red, white, and blue ones appear to be the most favored version of that, and they're highly sought after.
There were basically two versions of this. One is called the 25A, which is what this one is. It's the red, white, and blue version. The base color on the paint is frost white. And in certain light, you can actually see these stripe decals that go down the side of the car and over the trunk. They actually reflect light. And so they're pretty interesting to see at dusk when you're underneath overhead lights, because as the color of the car starts to be less visible, you can still see the stripes sticking out because they have reflective metallic in them. This one is a 4-speed car, and you could get these in either automatic or in a 4-speed.
So if you look at all these red, white, and blue cars, all of these cars have taken over 30 years to accumulate this collection. I would buy a car and then modify it and improve it and then sell it and buy another one, and before you know it, I started having the opportunity to have all of these red, white, and blue cars, and to the best of my knowledge, this is the only red, white, and blue collection of all 5 of these that is in existence. And of particular interest is the Superstock, which is one of 52, and in fact, number 52, the last Superstock AMX ever made.
These type of acquisitions are a challenge for anybody, but a double or triple challenge when you're looking for an American Motors collection. And part of it is because some of these cars have such a low manufacturing volume. So if you're trying to find one of 52 with only 36 or 38 or 39 known to remain, or you're trying to find one of 100 and there's only 45 or 50 of them known to remain, it's a real challenge to find those cars. Sometimes luck has something to do with it, and I will certainly readily admit that 2 of the cars here, the Superstock AMX and the Trans Am Javelin, were just pure luck, and that enabled me to get this complete collection of all 5 American Motors red, white, and blue cars. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and we look forward to the next time we are on If This Car Could Talk.